let's get one thing straight. This isn't about playing games. It's about remembering your value after someone forgot it. Too many people are out here losing sleep, overthinking every message, replaying every moment, wondering what they could have done differently, while the person who hurt them moves on without a second thought. But here's the true thing. When someone shows you they can walk away from you easily, the most powerful response is not to chase. It's not to beg. It's not even to prove a point. It's to reclaim your peace, elevate your life, and act like they never mattered. Because once you do that, they are the ones left haunted by what ifs. You don't need closure. You don't need revenge. You just need to stop showing up for someone who stopped choosing you. And the moment you do, that's when regret starts to eat him alive. In the silence, in the distance, and in the life he'll never get access to again. Every time you check his social media, respond to his texts, or even bring his name up in conversations filled with pain or longing, you're giving him something he no longer deserves. Your energy. You're feeding the ego of someone who chose not to show up for you. It's like watering a dead plant and expecting it to bloom. And deep down, you know he isn't doing the same. He's not refreshing your profile or lying awake thinking about how to fix things. He's moving on, not because he's stronger, but because he's not the one who gave genuinely in the first place. When someone ghosts you, mistreats you, or walks away without explanation, your first instinct might be to make sense of it. You want closure. You want clarity. You want to believe there's still a connection, because the idea that someone could stop caring so easily hurts. But that's the trap. You keep showing up emotionally, hoping he'll see your pain and realize what he lost. And with every little act, liking a post, replying to a message, answering his late night, "I miss you," texts, you keep the illusion alive that he still matters in your life. What you're really doing is keeping yourself stuck. You're reliving a chapter that was never going to end well. He made a decision when he left, and every time you feed that decision with more of your time and attention, you reinforce that it was okay for him to make it. You're not punishing him by being distant, but still available. You're rewarding his detachment by staying emotionally connected. Now here's where the real shift happens. You stop trying to be on his radar. You stop using hope as a way to delay your healing, and you begin to protect your energy like it's gold. Because it is. You choose not to check up on him, not to respond when he resurfaces with meaningless texts, and not to imagine conversations that will never happen. That kind of emotional discipline isn't easy, but it's where your power begins. You have to remember ego is fragile, especially in people who are used to being chased. When you stop showing that you care, really stop, not pretend to, he notices. The silence is confusing. The lack of reaction is disarming. When someone is used to having a hold over you, nothing unsettles them more than realizing that grip is gone. And no, this isn't about being manipulative or trying to make him suffer. This is about pulling your energy out of a space that no longer honors it. This is about refusing to be a participant in your own emotional depletion. He had his chance to value you. He had the opportunity to show up, to stay, to be consistent, and he didn't. So why are you still giving him access to your emotional world? Letting go doesn't always come with a clean break. Sometimes it looks like choosing not to reply to that one message, not viewing that one story, not bringing his name into every conversation with your friends. It's in the tiny decisions that you start to rebuild your self-worth. And before you know it, you're no longer performing detachment. You're living it. Eventually, the person who expected you to wait around, to keep chasing, to always be available, realizes they've been locked out, not by some dramatic exit, but by your decision to simply stop giving. And when that happens, regret begins to creep in. Not because you made him regret it, but because he finally sees what it means to lose someone who truly cared. When someone disrespects you, dismisses your emotions, cheats on you, lies to you, or abandons you without a second thought, that is your closure. It may not feel like it in the moment. In fact, it usually doesn't. Most people go searching for something more. An apology, an explanation, a final conversation to tie things up in a neat little bow. But real life doesn't offer that kind of tidy resolution, especially not from someone who didn't value in the first place. The mistake we make is thinking that closure has to come from them, that they need to help us understand why they did what they did. But here's the truth that most people don't want to facing. The way they treated you is the explanation. That's the whole story, right there in their actions. You may feel like you need to hear it from their mouth. That you were enough, that they're sorry, that it wasn't your fault. But what you really need is the courage to take their behavior at face value. People who care about you don't leave you confused. They don't make you feel like you're asking for too much just by wanting clarity, consistency, or commitment. So if someone gives you anything less than respect, consider that the final answer. Don't waste your emotional energy chasing a version of them that only existed in your mind. It's hard, especially when you loved someone deeply or saw a future with them. But love isn't enough to hold on to someone who isn't willing to hold on to you. And sometimes, the very person you hoped would bring you peace is the one who keeps reopening your wounds. That's why they can't be the one to give you closure. Because their presence only prolongs your healing. You owe it to yourself to stop reopening doors that only ever led to pain. Stop texting when you miss them. Stop checking if they're online. Stop waiting for them to suddenly become the person you needed them to be all along. Every time you do, you're handing your healing over to the same person who broke you. You're saying, I trust you to fix what you damaged, when history has already proven they won't. They couldn't show up for you when it mattered, and that tells you everything you need to know. Closure, real closure, comes from you. It comes from the decision to stop looking for healing in the person who hurt you. It comes from choosing your dignity over temporary comfort. It comes from no longer making excuses for their behavior or pretending their absence was some kind of accident. It wasn't. It was a choice. And now, your job is to make your own choice, to move forward without needing their validation or permission. When you truly embrace this, something powerful happens. You stop needing them to understand what they lost. You stop trying to make them see your worth. You just know your worth. And in that space, the pain starts to loosen its grip. You stop reliving the past because you no longer need it to turn out differently. You're too focused on building a future where your peace isn't negotiable. The hardest part isn't letting go of the person. It's letting go of the hope that they'll come back better. But you don't need them to come back better. You need to get better at choosing yourself. Because the more you choose you, the less you'll crave anything from someone who didn't. That's when healing begins. Not when they apologize. Not when they explain. But when you finally accept that their disrespect was the only closure you ever needed. Regret is one of those things that doesn't show up immediately. It takes time. It creeps in slowly, often when life gets quiet and the people who used to be there are no longer within reach. That's why your job isn't to rush karma or try to make someone feel what you felt. Your job is to step back, focus on your own growth, and stop trying to control how and when they finally realize what they lost. That realization, when it hits, will be far more powerful than anything you could have orchestrated yourself. When someone walks away, disrespects you, or acts like you're replaceable, it's tempting to prove a point. You want to show them you're doing better without them. You want them to see that you've moved on, that you're thriving, that they missed out on something rare. That's a natural reaction. But here's the truth. When your motivation is rooted trying to make them feel regret, you're still emotionally tethered to them. You're still giving them power over your next move. The real win isn't in pretending you're okay. It's in actually getting to a place where their opinion no longer holds weight. Regret hits hardest when someone no longer has access. It doesn't come from seeing you post a perfect photo or hearing about your new job. It comes from the moment they realize you don't care whether they notice or not, that your life has moved forward and they're no longer part of it. That's when the weight of their choices finally lands, not because you tried to make them regret it, but because you stopped trying altogether. Time has a way of revealing what people tried to ignore. When they're sitting alone, scrolling through old memories, watching people around them build real connections, and they remember someone who genuinely cared. Someone who showed up, stayed loyal, and gave fully. That's when regret kicks in. That's when they understand what they gave up. And by that point, it's not fixable. That's what makes regret so painful. It's not just the loss, it's the knowledge that they caused it. But none of that happens if you keep the door open, if you keep responding, if you keep engaging. Regret only grows in the absence of attention. When someone sees that they no longer live rent-free in your mind, that's when their ego starts to crack. You don't have to post quotes or indirect messages. You don't have to prove you're healing. You just have to actually heal quietly and consistently. And that healing, that peace, that freedom, that's what eats them alive. You don't have to punish them. Life will do that. Not in some cruel, vengeful way, but in the natural order of things. Because when you operate with love and integrity, you attract better. And when someone throws away something real, they usually end up surrounded by people who only love the surface. That contrast alone is punishment enough, and knowing they gave up something rare for something shallow. That's where regret begins. So stop watching their moves. Stop hoping they'll see your progress. Focus on becoming so whole that whether they ever realize what they lost or not, it doesn't matter anymore. Because the moment you detach is the moment the real regret begins for them. And the moment the real healing begins for you. Not because they're hurting, but because you finally stopped trying to make them feel anything at all. You reclaimed your power, and they lost the privilege of witnessing it. Closure isn't something another person gives you. It's something you decide to take. We grow up believing that after someone hurts us, we need one final conversation, one last apology, one more explanation to finally move on. But the truth is, the way someone treats you is often the only closure you'll ever get. And it's more than enough if you're willing to accept it for what it is. The disrespect, the inconsistency, the emotional withdrawal, that was the answer. That was them telling you who they really are, not with words, but with actions. And actions are always more honest than promises. It's hard to accept because it forces you to go let of the version of them that existed only in your head. The version you held on to when they were already slipping away. You wanted to believe they'd come around, step up, see your worth, or at the very least explain why they hurt you. But when someone consistently disrespects your boundaries, ghosts you, or keeps you in emotional limbo, that's the truth staring you in the face. They weren't confused. They weren't just going through something. They made a choice. And that choice didn't include protecting your heart. You don't need to sit across from them while they justify what they did. You don't need to hear them say they regret it. You don't need to go back and forth rehashing memories, hoping to make sense of the pain. Because the moment you start trying to convince someone to acknowledge how they hurt you, you're putting your healing in their hands. And if they were careless with you once, chances are they're not capable of holding that responsibility now. Expecting closure from someone who had no problem wounding you is like asking a thief to help you find what they stole. There's power in deciding that you're done, even without the apology, that you've seen enough, that their behavior was the final word. Of your absent, you don't need to keep reopening the same wound just because you didn't get the ending you wanted. Not everyone who exits your life will give you the dignity of a clean goodbye. Some people just leave, drift, or betray you in ways that make it impossible to understand. But it's not your job to understand them. It's your job to protect you. Moving on doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means acknowledging the pain sitting with it, and still choosing to walk forward. It means saying, "This isn't love," even when your heart tries to argue otherwise. It means letting go of the idea that they owe you something, because holding on to that idea will only keep you stuck in a loop where you keep seeking validation from the person who took your peace. When you finally stop chasing closure, you start creating space. Space for new thoughts, new habits, and eventually new people who show up fully. People who don't make you question your worth or beg for clarity. But that can only happen when you take your focus off the one who broke you and put it back on rebuilding yourself. It's a quiet kind of strength. The decision to walk away without fanfare, to say nothing, block the number, delete the thread, and choose yourself without waiting for them to notice. That's not cold. That's clarity. You've seen who they are. You've heard all you need to hear. You've felt all you need to feel. And now you're done explaining why you deserve better. You're just going to live like it. And that, more than any final conversation, is your real closure. You weren't in love with him. You were in love with his potential. The version of him that existed in your imagination. The one you hoped he would grow into. The one you thought was buried underneath the inconsistency, the excuses, the half-hearted affection. But potential is a dangerous thing to fall for. It keeps you hanging on to a relationship that only exists in your hopes, not in reality. You keep thinking, maybe if I'm more patient, more supportive, more understanding, he'll become that person I believe he can be. But all that really does is trap you in a cycle where you keep shrinking yourself while waiting for someone else to rise. The hardest part isn't letting go of the person. It's letting go of the fantasy.